We've got the Eagles and Dallas. So I don't know how I'm deciding who gets their mascot said and who gets their city said. It's just kind of happening. I just realized like every matchup, one gets the city and one gets the
I
mascot,
just
and I have
assume you
no
don't
idea
know
why.
what the other one is, so you just go with the
I
one
know
that you.
what they all are. All right, and welcome to another episode of DB2, fresh off Thursday night football. David Brem here with Daniel Butler as always. Butler, how's it going?
Well, I am a Texans fan, so that was a little rough. Davis Mills, he had that one drive before half, so hopefully, they let him just it doesn't seem like anything's going to happen with the Texans this year. So as long as Tyrod's out, so as long as that, I want him to, he's a rookie, get some snaps under him. They were really not pushing it downfield for the first half of that game until right before half, so it's got to see him do a little something. But it was ugly, but on to the next game. We will talk more about the Carolina Houston game next week, but man, DJ Moore is really good. Maybe a top 10 receiver. Brandon Cook's also very good as well. Not much else to talk about with the game, I don't think. Darnold had a nice fantasy day. Probably not a lot of people started him, unless it's a
No
very deep
info on
league. Or
McCaffrey right now, and
McCaffrey's not great, obviously. We'll see. We'll find more news about that later. But Hubbard, obviously, will be a top pickup for many people if he's not owned. But then we're going to talk about, so there will be timestamps down below for everything we talk about. But before we do that, hit the like button, subscribe as well. It really does help us out. Comment if you have any questions, comments, any of that. That does all help us out. But timestamps if you're looking for anything specifically. But first, we're going to go through all the games. We're going to talk about Washington and Buffalo. Some games we're just going to run super fast through. Not a lot to talk about that you haven't already heard. But with Washington with Buffalo, I do want to talk about Diami Brown. We're going to talk a lot more about him. We're going to have a short, like 5-minute video on him that will go out on Saturday. But the rest of it, McLaurin, obviously really good, coming off an amazing week. Gibson, McKissick, coming off a really nice game. But you're probably not starting him unless he's a flex. Anything on the Bills? We did talk about Emmanuel Sanders a little bit in the
yeah,
video.
we've talked about the Sanders and the Beasley stuff and where we stand on that. I think we both agreed. I'm trying to remember. I know I'm much higher on Sanders than Beasley. There's not a whole lot of like, what are you trying to figure out? Like quarterback wise, you're starting Allen, you're not starting Hinkie. Even though last week didn't go this way, you're still starting Gibson, running back wise in Washington.
Yeah,
Nothing super exciting or choices you're gonna have to make in this game.
yeah. You might be starting McKissick in a deeper
In
league
a
for sure.
flex.
He definitely he sees the field a little bit. I think he's consistent around. He's in the mid-30s ranking. So yeah, he might be a flex in a deeper league for sure, or if you're really desperate for a running back, but probably not starting anybody but your studs in that game. Even though we talked about Emmanuel Sanders, you're probably still not starting him. It's just more maybe deeper leagues or down the line with him and Beasley. Moving on to the next game, Chicago with Cleveland. Is there anything that you want to talk about there? You obviously have the dual-headed monster in Chubb and Hunt in Cleveland. Wide receivers are just decimated with Jarvis going down. They're already lacking a little bit.
Not necessarily for week 3. I think but I think going forward, I'm very interested to see, because Fields is starting this game. Fields is going to play the whole game. I'm interested to see if there's a wide receiver maybe he locks onto that he really likes. Maybe if he hits the tight end more than Dalton was. I think we could get some interesting information from this game for sure. Not a whole lot to go on right now, but definitely some information to glean going forward.
Yeah, Allen Robinson starting off slow. We expect him to be great. So you're obviously starting him, I'm sure, unless you're in a very small league. Allen Robinson's going to be starting. Yeah, Justin Fields, Cole Kmet. Is he going to be, the main, is he going to lock? He could go skyrocket up in usage, or maybe Jimmy Graham. Maybe he'll trust him a little. Maybe we'll see a little bit more of that. I doubt that. And then on Cleveland's side, you have the 2 tight ends. If you're starting one, you're probably going with Hooper. Odell, hopefully, for Cleveland's sake, like they have pass catchers that are none of them are relevant. Even Odell, I don't think anybody's starting Odell this week. Even with Cleveland that being their number one receiver. Chubb and Hunt, you're probably starting both of them if you draft them. Hunt's a pretty solid flex option. But Mayfield, you're probably not starting either. So there's really not a
No,
whole
I
lot on
really just
Cleveland.
the running backs in
Yeah.
Cleveland are the only thing you feel any sense of good about starting.
And we wouldn't be surprised if Odell, Peoples-Jones, Schwartz, any of these guys have really good games, but you just can't trust
You
them.
can't
One
start,
of them
yeah, you
might
can't do
one
it.
of them might have a good game. Mayfield, may throw for 300 yards, and one of them might have 100 yards. But we just can't. We just don't know which one, and in the end, you probably can't start it. You have better options elsewhere.
Yeah, not a whole lot to go off of. Next we've got Baltimore and Detroit, or as I used to call them to really make my dad angry, the real Browns. I mean, you kind of know what you're getting from Baltimore. You're obviously starting Jackson if you have him. Running backs wise, I think Williams is still the guy. They're closer, but I still think Williams is the guy. I don't know, wide receiver wise, you're definitely starting Hollywood and maybe Watkins if you have to. I don't know if you have any other. That's what I've got on Baltimore.
Hollywood, I seen the consensus ranking down at 29. I think if I'm seeing that right, he's wide receiver 8 this year. I think that's pretty low. I think if you have Hollywood, I can't imagine there's 28 other receivers that I would start over Hollywood Brown right now. I mean, 8, he's done it back-to-back weeks. Wide receiver 17 in week 1, wide receiver 7 in week 2. I don't see, they're probably not 28 wide guys. I would like more than that. Watkins, you're probably not starting unless it's a deep league.
That's you got to be in a pinch.
Andrews, obviously, you're starting.
We're going to talk about this in a couple games. There are some wide receivers that are ranked significantly lower than I think should be, and we're going to touch on this. There might still be some bias from like preseason rankings in that. So we're going to touch on that, but that you'll sense that as a little bit of a theme. Tight end wise, I guess you're starting Andrews if you drafted him, but I don't know that you feel amazing about it.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. There's no way you have a better option than Mark Andrews. Yeah. He hasn't lived up to it yet. He's wide receiver, tight end 18, from what I can see. So he hasn't lived up to it. But trust him. I think if you drafted him, it was a mistake. I was not high on Mark Andrews at all. I think I would never have him on my team. But I do think he is still, even though I still think he's somewhere between that 5 to 8 tight ends. I just think that what you were paying for him in the draft was too high. When you go to Detroit, besides obviously Hawkinson, who has been incredible, if you got him, that worked out quite well. He's been a stud. He's been one of the best tight ends, obviously, in tight end 3 right now. Goff has been really good, fantasy wise. Fantasy-wise, he's been good.
I was gonna let you take this.
Jared Goff. Oh my god! I thought
you're gonna be like, yeah, Hawkinson. He just caught the ball. I don't know who threw it. It just kind of showed up in his hands.
I don't really know. Goff. He was actually just got. I mean, he threw it and it happened to go in Hawkins. He actually tried to throw it away from him. It just happened to get somehow in Hawkinson's hands. Just a miracle. But yeah, he's quarterback 9 currently. So Goff, but ranked 25th. I don't expect that to continue with being quarterback 9. As much as I hate on Jared Goff, he's a quarterback who has thrown the ball this year and has been successful in putting up fantasy numbers. I can say that. Swift, Williams, both at running back. You definitely started Swift. Williams as a flex, I think you feel pretty good. He's running back 11 right now. Granted, that's from the first game. He got a lot of that.
He was 40 last
because
week,
Goff is just dumping it off so much to his backs. I don't think, I look at him as running back 35 ranked consensus right now. I mean, he was running back 40 this past week, but I think that's way too low. I think the way that this team plays, Detroit plays, I don't think this Baltimore defense is really that great. I think they're going to be able to move the ball, and I think Swift and Williams definitely could score touchdowns, and they're going to be heavily involved in the passing game. So I actually really like the Detroit backfield, both of them, for this upcoming game and the rest of the season. The way that they're playing, I really like them. I spent a lot of time on that.
So just for clarification, you really like that Swift Williams in the passing game, and who is throwing them the football?
I don't know how it's getting there, but it's getting to them, and Goff is able to throw it 5 yards beyond the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
So props
Listen,
to him on
I
that
have
one.
to be the resident like golf apologist on this, just because you hate him so much, and even he's not a top 10 quarterback. Like,
Yeah. But I was funny about this whole, and this is just the way. I mean, even you didn't bring them up. We didn't talk about any of the receivers, and I think
well,
that
why would you? Yeah.
because one, there's not a whole lot of talent there, but yeah, they don't. That's not the way that they're using golf. That's not the way this offense is
No.
working. I don't think that any of those you're starting at least anytime soon. So there's not even probably worth mentioning there. But
Like
definitely,
the best week any of them had. I mean, we're 2 weeks in, so that's but the best week any is wide receiver 25,
yeah.
and he was 56 the week before. So you can't trust any wide receivers in that game. Next up, we got Indy and Tennessee. Uh, once there's a lot of these that I mean, obviously Pittman is looked fantastic last week, looked not great the first week, so it's you kind of wonder what's going on there. Um, I think you're probably still starting him if you have him more than likely, just kind of depending on roster makeup. I know I have one league where he's not, but that's because I have like 6 wide receivers that just happen to all hit. But he's a decent start if you need to. Um, Doyle actually was tight end number 9 last week, which surprised me. I don't remember much about him, but he probably just solidly had. I should have pulled up his stats. Probably just had a solid handful of catches and some yards. So in a pinch, he could be a guy you're starting, but on the Indy side of the ball, nothing too crazy. You're starting Taylor, but is there anybody on there that intrigues you?
Yeah, on Indy's, I mean, I guess got to mention because he's wide receiver 18. We have Pascal, Zach Pascal, I believe it's Pascal, not Pascal, at wide receiver 18. Both back-to-back good weeks. I mean, week 2, it looks like he was wide receiver 31, but I mean, that's not bad.
That's a starter in a lot, or at least a flex in a lot of leagues.
Now, I still don't think you're starting him. I still think we need a little bit more. But he is on the field. He actually outsnapped Pittman even this past week. He was just a few snaps under Pittman. They are a very heavy 2 wide receiver set. They use a lot of 2 tight ends. So these are the 2, Pittman and Pascal. I mean, Pittman's coming off a solid game. He was, I don't think he got in the end zone, but he had a lot of catches. I remember that. I'll actually, it depends on Wentz. Wentz has been okay. He's been, I know injured both ankles in the same play.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what's going on there, but obviously Wentz has had injury concerns. But yeah, I actually, with Wentz being healthy, which is a huge if, but if Wentz is healthy, I actually think that both of these receivers are interesting, but I don't think I would start either of them. I definitely wouldn't start either of them if Wentz doesn't go. And Pittman is maybe a flex if you're, I don't want to say you're desperate, but he's a pretty low flex, I think. And at Taylor, you're obviously starting, so that running back.
Yeah, he's had
even though he has
a tale of 2 weeks.
Amazing.
But... And then on the Tennessee side, I actually I want to give you props. You kind of laid out all the rankings and stuff for all the guys. I'm actually surprised at kind of how poorly Tannehill has finished the first couple weeks. Like I thought he'd be like 15, 14, like in that range preseason. And to see him, he's been 19 and 21 the first 2 weeks. I probably should have guessed it because I know AJ Brown hasn't been doing very well because he's on one of my teams. But probably Tannehill went from a guy who, like, if you waited on quarterback, you're okay with, to a guy you really probably might have a better option on the waiver wire.
Yeah, and I mean we might talk about some of those options soon, but yeah, Tannehill still ranked quarterback 14. I think he's okay. I think now you're like, okay, lower end on the QB1. Like before, you're like, oh yeah, he's a solid QB1. He was a top 10 guy last year.
NFL wise, I really like him, but he's just not.
Yeah,
and
so
part of the season.
The difference between a lot of the quarterbacks is not overly even. The difference between quarterback 10, quarterback 12, and 14. There's not a huge difference, but still that could be the difference in wins and losses. So you want to obviously start the best guy. Derrick Henry. Good.
I'd probably start him.
Pretty good. Yeah, and AJ Brown. If I saw somebody in my wife's works league, they wanted to trade AJ Brown, and I'm like, we need to get AJ Brown because I still believe in him. He's still ranked very highly, even though he hasn't produced yet. I think that's going to come around. Julio had a nice week this past week, had a touchdown overturned, but he looked great. So, and Chester Rogers, a third wide receiver there that, you never know. He might put up some numbers. He's currently wide receiver 73, but all three wide receivers haven't been great yet. But I do think A.J. Brown and Julio, especially A.J. Brown, I think is still going to be a stud.
I hope you're correct for my own team's sake.
And I just want to mention real quick, A.J. Brown, 84% of the snaps, Julio Jones, 75%, Chester Rogers, 43% of the snaps in week 2. So obviously they have a lot of 2 tight end sets. But your two guys,
not
AJ
one of those
Brown
3 wide receiver
Yep.
teams we've talked about a lot.
Yep.
All right, and then we got the Chargers and the Chiefs. Chargers, Herbert's probably not a guy you're relying on, I would hope. Allen's a little bit lower than I would have expected. He's still ranked 9 like rest of the season, but he hasn't. I guess technically he cracked the top 20 in week 1, but he was at 20. But he's 22 overall. He's kind of a guy that obviously you expected more coming out of draft day.
Yeah, and I'm not concerned about it. I mean, we're only 2 weeks in. He's been solid both weeks. He just isn't getting those touchdowns. Same with Herbert. Again, they still have him ranked as a top 10 guy. I still think he's right in that 9 to 12ish quarterbacks. Even though he hasn't been that yet. I think that will change. Eckler's obviously a stud. This past week he was good, so trust him. You're always going to be playing him, obviously. But the surprise, and I actually do want to talk about this a little bit, is Mike Williams.
Yeah,
this is currently wide receiver 5. Now I do think he's on the field 76% of the time compared to 92% for Keenan Allen. So he's on the field a decent amount, but you didn't expect this type of production. He has been so good, and it's not like some of these receivers that have a really good week and then not so good a week, and they're still one of the higher. He's actually been 2 great weeks back to back. So I think now. I mean, when I threw out this name, it was one of those first videos we did. I said guys that could be a top 10 receiver, and I remember it was Mike Williams. Like no chance. I don't know. I don't think he can be a top 10 receiver, but he's currently number 5, and I'm like. I think we got to reevaluate a little bit that this might be 2 top 20 receivers there.
Yeah, I could see him. I could see him like deeper in the teens for sure, like somewhere between like 15 and 19, like 15, 20.
So yeah, you'll start both of them, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. I think.
Well, and that kind of should give you a little bit of solace if you do have Herbert season long. Like if he's going to have 2 wide receivers playing that well. And Kirk and a fairly solid tight end and a great running back.
Yeah,
you're not too worried about Herbert, but yeah, Mike Williams. If he can keep this up, we could have been wrong on the no way thing, but yeah, I think probably like a 15 to 20 is fairly reasonable for him.
It's been great so far. And then if we go over to Kansas City, I don't know what to mention here. Obviously Mahomes, you're starting Mahomes.
Other than the fact that Tyreek single-handedly lost me my fantasy game last week.
And this is an example, like Mike Williams was 14-10 week 1 and 2 rankings wide receivers. Hill was number 2 and number 67, but still wide receiver 7. So obviously I'd rather have Tyreek Hill over Mike Williams, but starting this fantasy year, Mike Williams has I like that consistency a lot more. You like just what that gives you. I don't expect Mike Williams to be a top 15, top 10 wide receiver every week, but obviously he's probably won people their weeks the first couple weeks. If you started him in week, you probably didn't start him in week 1, you might have started him in week 2. But yeah, looking at this, Tyreek Hill did not have a great game, but
no, and he'll be. I mean, he's obviously going to be fine.
The one thing I do want to mention is Edwards-Helaire. I was not high on him at all, and he hasn't really lived up to.
I felt like he was very much, and he's still kind of, because he's still ranked like 18 going forward. He's still kind of just getting that Kansas City bump. Like people are just like, oh, he plays for Kansas City, he must be a stud. But like Mahomes, Tyreek, and Kelsey are studs. Like That doesn't mean everybody like there's not another wide receiver you care about on that team.
Yeah.
Like really.
Do we care about has Kansas City had a valuable running back with Mahomes? I don't know if they have a fantasy like.
I'm trying to
I mean,
think back.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire has maybe been the first one, and yeah, he
It's
might
probably not
have
a
some
great
big
sign that
weeks.
I think Kansas City running back. I still think Priest Holmes. So, um,
Priest
yeah,
Holmes, he was a beast.
yeah. So yeah, with Edwards-Helaire, like you drafted him, you probably have to start him where you drafted him, but I think he gets that like, oh, he's in Kansas City bump, and that just doesn't make any sense. Like just because the guys around him are talented doesn't necessarily mean he's he's a fine NFL running back, but
Yeah,
fantasy wise,
I don't have
want
his
any part of it.
ADP here, but I want to say he was drafted in the second round, I think.
Something like that, I believe.
And now you're probably like end of third round, maybe. Like you're probably somewhere around there. I don't know. It's definitely in the third round, probably. So I don't feel great about it. I didn't buy into it at all going into the year,
No.
and so far it hasn't. I still think he'll be good. I think he's going to put up big numbers because he is in Kansas City and he's playing, but I don't think he's.
You're
quite as
buying into
high.
the Kansas City hype.
A little
Can't
bit,
do that.
just a little bit.
So, all right, we got New Orleans and New England next. Kamara, not. I mean, he had week one. He was 10th, but he's 21 overall in the season. Obviously, not where you expected him to be. Even if it is a couple weeks into the season, he'll be absolutely fine. A little surprising. I don't know if this is surprising or not, but I'm a little surprised to see how low they've been. But like, there's not really a wide receiver you care about on this team at all.
Yeah, Winston. Remember, Winston got 5 touchdowns in that week one, but I mean, it was 148 yards, so there wasn't a lot of value, and that's why we see the tight end Johnson at tight end 5 in week one, and then tight end 34 in week like the tight ends. I think Johnson had like three of those, so 2 or 3. He might even had 3.
I think 2.
2. Okay, so
I think Kamara had 2, maybe 2.
yeah, so Winston had those 5 touchdowns, but just didn't pass for any yards, and there hasn't been any value at wide receiver. I mean, Harris had a nice game because he has, I think he had like close to 100 yards and a touchdown in that week one, but I could be wrong on that, just off the top of my head. Maybe that's wrong, but yeah, so he had that touchdown, I'm pretty sure, but outside of that, I really was high on Callaway because I thought the talent was enough there, and Winston, I thought he was going to put up big numbers passing yards wise. We haven't seen it yet, so maybe this is not that Winston. It was not good in week 2. New Orleans was not good. Carolina, probably that defense is for real, but maybe that's a part of it. But Winston, he just. Right now, I liked Callaway. I thought he was like a guy that I would like to own. Like I feel like he could have a good rest of the season. I don't like it.
And he still could, and Wentz could figure it out. But at least right now, the only Saint you're starting is Kamara.
And
like,
yeah, and he'll be fine. He's not been amazing yet, but Kamara is going to be great.
Yeah,
so
I'm not.
Don't worry about
we're
that.
We're not worried about him. On the New England side of the ball, not a whole lot you're crazy excited about. A couple running backs though that are both very, very serviceable. In Harrison White, both guys you could justifiably start on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're both borderline top 20 guys. I feel pretty good about both. They're both about on the field close to half the time. I'm looking at the snap counts. Harris is on the field 41% of the time, James White 50% of the time, and that's not a whole lot, but their production has been there. Has probably a lot to do with a rookie running back liking to, those dumping off to the running backs involved in the passing game. So not a lot to say. Myers at wide receiver, if you're starting.
I mean, you're probably not touching a wide receiver.
And the tight ends, as of now, they're exactly what we thought. Maybe you thought they would be a little bit better, but you're in a timeshare with Jonnu and Hunter, and unfortunately that means not one of them is really that valuable, but Jonnu is still the guy to own, and that's how it was at the beginning of the season as well.
Yeah,
so
but
not much.
Try to find a better option.
Yeah.
All right. We've got Atlanta and the Giants next. Atlanta, I think, in my opinion, has almost been the most disappointing fantasy-wise team kind of overall. Like, I don't know that I had huge hopes for Matt Ryan as like a fantasy quarterback, but I really thought that Ridley would be a stud, and he probably will still pull it out. And Pitts kind of finally showed. Not finally sounds so bad as the second week, but Pitts showed a lot more last week than he did in week one. But that whole offense was awful week 1.
Yeah, and Matt Ryan. I mean, it's just I don't know. I don't know if it,
I
yeah,
mean,
it's
you're not
just
touching him in fantasy.
yeah.
Like,
Davis is still probably starting him as a flex. Like if you probably at running back. Ridley, unfortunately, I mean he had a solid game last week.
yeah.
You're starting him every week. I don't know Cordell Patterson. I think he's a running back now. I'm not sure. I think is he listed as running back or is he wide receiver? I'm not even sure. But you're
Yeah.
probably not starting him. But he is coming off a really nice game last week. And Pitts. You talked about Pitts preseason before any games, and
Yeah, I was super excited about him, and
he
I'd like
was
to see Matt Ryan step up his game a little bit because
he's
obviously
but he did have
Pitts
a nice
utilized
game
him.
last week, coming off
He
the
did.
week 1 not doing much. So I think better days still ahead. I think he'll still have better games than he had this week, and it was a nice bounce back game, I guess if you can say bounce back, even though it was only a second game. But he had a nice game for sure.
But yeah, Pitts and Ridley are really the two guys you feel good about starting on this offense.
Yeah, and then over on the Giants side, Daniel Jones. I mean, if he's running as much as he is,
Yeah.
you gotta say he's got fantasy value, for sure. Saquon is. I stayed away from him. He was going at the end of the first round, I think, if I remember. And man, it's just so tough. He obviously these injuries, and it's just. I mean, he's so talented that if he does suit up, if he's on, you have to start
Yeah.
him. That's the problem. So like,
Yeah.
you're stuck where you're like, okay, he looks like sometimes he just looks so good.
Well, and you don't want to be the guy who benched him when he went off for 180.
So I like him obviously as a talent. I couldn't draft him. I had opportunities to, and I just couldn't do it.
He could be a guy where, like, if there's someone in your league that just still sees that name and like thinks of him as like a top like 3 running back, you might be able to get some value out of him on the trade market, and I might try to do that. I don't know that I want any part of that on my team the rest of the season. I mean, he's not on any of my teams because I wasn't drafting where he got drafted, but he might be, if you did end up with him, he could almost be weirdly a sell high guy just on name alone.
Yeah, and I do like his talent though. I hope
Oh yeah.
I hope he's able to deliver like top 10 running back value. Wide receiver wise, Shepard has been incredible. Again, Daniel Jones has had quite a lot of fantasy value. A lot of that because of his running, but he's also been throwing it, and Shepard's been catching it, and he's been very good. Currently, wide receiver 9, if I have that correctly, which is I was very surprised when I saw that. He is clearly the wide receiver you want to own for the Giants if you're starting a wide receiver there. Galladay you might be starting if you have to, but not much in tight end land. So yeah, Sterling
Well,
Shepard
and
has been an absolute stud.
I'm looking at like PPR points for the season, and he's wide receiver 9, but he is one touch. Like if he would have caught one more touchdown, he'd be wide receiver 4.
Yeah,
Like
he's been incredible.
he's bunched right up there with those top guys. He's looked great, and honestly, I think it's looking more and more like you can trust Jones, and if you can trust him, Shepard's going to be in every week.
Yeah, and I
Guaranteed
there's another guy.
in the
He's
lineup.
wide receiver 26, and maybe it's just because maybe that I'm crazy, but I can't imagine there's 25 receivers that I would rather start than Shepard going against the Atlanta Falcons.
No,
He's currently wide
especially this
receiver
week.
9, and it's not like that was all in one week. He's been great both weeks. So, and yeah, you said if he falls in the end zone one more time, he's a top 5 wide receiver. So I just can't imagine that I would start 25 guys over him. He's been great. Jones has been great. I shouldn't say great. He's been pretty good fantasy coming off of he actually has been great. He has
I
been
would say
quarterback
I
5.
would take 12 and 4. You know
I
what
was
mean?
looking at his ranking for this week, which is 12. But yeah, he's been very good, and the rushing helping out a lot there.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, we got a division matchup: Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. I mean, Cincinnati. We've talked about that situation exhaustively, just because they're how much I specifically, but both of us like Chase, Jamar Chase. Burrow is not really a fantasy guy you probably want to deal with, but he is solid enough that he's getting the ball to his guys, and Jamar Chase and Higgins are almost must starts. Like they're both up there, and I feel pretty good about our preseason. Hey, I don't think Chase is going to be like the foregone number 3 in this in this offense. And honestly, Higgins has been a little more solid, just a little bit lower than Chase. Like he's been more consistent in the 2 weeks. And Chase fell a little bit, but I don't see a way where you bench either one of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, there's a pretty good chance if you have him on your roster, you're starting him. I am in a situation where I don't think I'm starting Chase this week. It would be like between like Allen Robinson because I have Lockett and Keenan Allen,
Yeah.
so Allen Robinson. I still don't think I can play Chase over him, but but most of the time,
In a
if you
lot
have
of leagues,
a lot of
yeah.
leagues, you are starting Chase, for sure. Higgins, of course. Boyd is interesting.
Let's put it this way: if you're not starting Chase, congratulations on your wide receiver.
Yeah. So
Like-
yeah, Burrow is like this is probably the most this is the game that I always wanted to talk about the most because Burrow is the 20th ranked quarterback this week, 22nd overall. Ben is the 22nd this week, 27th overall, and they have three top both and we talked about this before, top 34 wide receivers, both of them, both teams.
Yeah.
But the quarterbacks are not fantasy relevant at all. What this means is I believe you have a lot of just risk with these guys. There is a good chance that one or maybe two of these guys do not have great games, these wide receivers. And one of them or two of them will have great games. I don't think the quarterbacks are putting up, like Burrow didn't have a great game last week, we know. Ben hasn't been great either weeks. It's not like Burrow's been great either week either, fantasy-wise. But I feel like, I think there's a chance that Boyd could get the touchdowns and that could take away their value. And same on the Pittsburgh side, you could have the same issue. But Higgins, Chase, Boyd, this is a only 3 wide receiver set team. So there are always 3 wide receivers on the field. 87% of the time, Tyler Boyd is on the field. He's the third most on the wide receivers. He's behind Chase at Higgins at 91% and Chase at 93% in week 1. So they like the 3 wide receivers. So they're going to be on the field. It's just a question if Burrow will find them and which ones he's throwing to. And that's why there's definitely risk to these guys because 3 wide receivers is really hard, especially when Burrow and Big Ben are not going to be putting up probably crazy high passing numbers, which I already kind of talked about it, but I guess we can talk about. Obviously, Mixon's a stud.
Well, Mixon, tail of 2 weeks, but you're throwing him in there.
He's a stud. On the Pittsburgh side, it's really like the echo of Cincinnati. I feel like there's like the same team. Like fantasy wise, you don't have a tight end. You have 3 top, like the wide receivers are almost exactly the same ranking, and Harris is like Mixon. Like they're both like top 10 guys. So I mean, obviously Mixon has been better so far, but Harris coming off a nice week this past week.
Yeah, like you said it exactly. Like they're basically playing each other offensive wise. Like you don't want any part of the quarterback. I will say objectively, Roethlisberger's looked significantly worse than Burrow this season, but still he's getting his wide receivers the ball. And another situation where, like you said, one of those guys could catch 3 touchdowns and it could just be the one you don't want to. But I think you're starting Smith-Schuster in almost every situation, more than likely. And then the other guys are kind of in the same boat, like you said, as the Bengals. Like, look at your team, figure it out. But honestly, you're not going to – it's not a stretch to say that all 3 of these guys will be starts in a lot of leagues.
Yeah.
All right. We have Arizona and Jacksonville. And this for the Cardinals are a team that have a guy that I'm just baffled at the rankings about. So obviously, Kyler, you're starting. He looks to be just a stud in fantasy, like we haven't seen in a pretty good one. Like I don't know about this, but I bet he's got to be the only player at any position that's been won every week. He's just been lights out.
Yeah, not even Kelsey. So yeah.
Yeah. Hopkins is a stud. You're starting him. He was like 30 last week, but you're not doing anything with him. Moore looked fantastic last week, but I want to talk about Kirk real quick. He is, I think, criminally undervalued right now. Like it's insane how low he's ranked. The rankings I'm looking at, like the cumulative rankings, have him at what was it,
55.
55. Yeah, there it is. 55 going forward this season. That's insane. Like, this team can obviously support 3. He was the number 10 wide receiver week 1. He was 53 last week. He didn't have a great, but Moore took everything last week. Like, that's what it wasn't. That's not going to happen every week where Moore just takes everything. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins was 30 last week. Do we think that's going to hold too? Like, that was an anomaly game. I think he's being criminally undervalued.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like Kirk as a talent. I do have concerns with their wide receiver core a little bit, in the fact that I'm looking at it. DeAndre Hopkins, obviously, he's on the field like every snap, but AJ Green is second, clearly the second. Now, I don't think AJ Green is really fantasy relevant, but he is relevant because he's a second receiver on the field. So that means that Christian Kirk isn't on the field as much at 62%. Rondale Moore, I'm looking at last week, 46%. So
I don't think that'll hold.
that does it's interesting because the back-to-back weeks, AJ Green has been over 80%. So I'm not sure when it will shift. I do expect Christian Kirk and Rondale Moore probably to take more and more playing time away from AJ Green, but and we'll see how that plays out. But right now we have 4 receivers that are getting like 50% or more playing time. So it's like it's all I'm gonna sometimes even probably using 4 wide receivers at one time. So I don't know where, and then Max Williams is coming off a great week as well. There is a lot, a mouse to feed, so I am a little concerned, but I don't think I think people are a little overreacting a little bit to Rondale Moore, because you said, like, he was on the field 46% of the time. He basically, every time he was on the field, he was thrown to. He was he was explosive. He was great. DeAndre Hopkins had like 4 targets. I think he caught all 4 of them. Like he wasn't really involved in the offense, even though he was on the field every play. So that doesn't hold. I do think Kirk is. I still don't know like how likely you are starting Kirk, at least.
Yeah, I don't know that you're starting him right away,
but I do think it's interesting to see him ranked right. I mean he's the 24th. Am I seeing that right? He's the 24th wide receiver right now, and rest of the season he's 55. Like. I know he was 10 in week 1. Like, maybe that's a little. I'm not saying he's a 24th ranked wide receiver, but to say he's 30 spots below that at 55, I do think that's a little wild.
Yeah, I'd be willing to bet that he ends the season, if not in the top 30, just outside of it. And because I think Green's snap count and his like his contribution to this team are just going to drop. I like Green a lot. He's at the back end of his career, and I don't know that he has it anymore to really be that helpful to that team. The running back situation, I mean, you're probably starting Edmonds, but as your 2 or maybe a flex, depending on how well your running backs worked out in your draft.
I like
he's
Edmonds.
nothing special. Him. Yeah, he's fine, but he's not.
He's a solid running back too, I think.
Yep. On the Jacksonville side, I mean, there's not a crazy amount to talk about. You're not going anywhere near Lawrence right now. He had a decent week 1, but you're not going anywhere near him.
A lot of garbage time against Houston in that comeback. Yeah,
not touching a tight end. Wide receivers are all kind of like bunched up together, like in that hopefully flex territory. So
I do want to talk a little bit about Marvin Jones. I actually think he's a little undervalued. Currently, 16. He's 21 back-to-back weeks. Like, wide receiver 35 ranked this week. I think that's kind of low. I mean, you
35,
do it
I think, is a little low. Yeah.
You do it back-to-back weeks. I wouldn't be surprised if this is another game like week 1. I mean, I was surprised when it happened, when Houston, was way ahead of Jacksonville. But I think this could similarly be the same thing here, where Arizona's ahead, and Jacksonville is forced to throw a lot, and Lawrence puts up good fantasy numbers like he did in week 1, and Marvin Jones is a nice recipient of that. So I actually think wide receiver 35, I really like Marvin Jones as a talent. I think he's been underrated his whole career. So I like him as a flex wide receiver, and I will say I think top 30 probably. I would probably have him at least 5 spots higher, but that's up to you to decide where you want to rank him, but who to start. But I think he's probably like Tyler Boyd was wide receiver 34. You had a couple Steelers guys. I think I'd start him above those guys too. So I'm thinking he's probably at least top 30 for me.
I didn't really think about the fact that's a good call. Like, they're almost certainly going to be down fairly quickly in this game. So
another team that uses 3 wide receivers, though, almost primarily, is the Jacksonville Jaguars. So if you're looking for, we don't talk about daily fantasy too much, but if you're looking for daily fantasy options, all 3 of these guys, Jones, Chenault, Chark, all of them are probably, especially Chark and Chenault, probably really good values for daily because they're on the field a lot. So
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Next we have Jets and Denver. I'm just looking at the Jets and like we've talked about Corey Davis a lot. We all know where I stand. He had a terrible week 2, a fantastic week 1, another one of those tale of 2
I don't
weeks.
think we can talk about how bad he was without mentioning Zach Wilson. What was that? He like
Yeah.
he was so bad.
Yeah. So that leads. It gave me some pause. Zach Wilson looking that bad last week because anybody who's watched our other episodes knows how high I am on Corey Davis. I still think he's going to be pretty good. Week 1, I felt really good for my thoughts on him. I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to end the season as a top 20 wide receiver, 25 maybe. Other than that, is there anybody on this team you want near your fantasy lineup?
Yeah, it's Corey Davis. I will say Michael Carter, a lot of people are expecting him to get more of the workload right now, but it is a dead split. It is as split as it can be with him and Ty Johnson. So right now you're not starting either one of them unless you're super desperate. But right now, yeah, Ty Johnson, Michael Carter had both 33 snaps this past week. So
And as much as I like Corey Davis, you're probably waiting to see if Wilson.
yeah,
can
you're waiting on
figure it
Corey
out.
Davis, and Wilson will have better days for sure. It can't be any worse. He was quarterback. Did you see that quarterback 33 this past week? So he was
That's not
lower,
great.
I believe. I'm assuming. I don't even. I'm not actually. I would. Yeah, whoever was Dalton, probably
Yeah,
32,
Dalton.
and then Wilson was maybe 33. So, yeah, that's not great. Going over to the Denver side. So. You may have probably heard Teddy Bridgewater has been a nice addition, and not probably
Yeah,
too relevant fantasy wise. You might be starting him in like a 12-team league if you're matchup dependent
if
sort
you
of thing,
waited. Yeah.
and playing against the Jets, you might feel pretty good about that. But yeah, Teddy Bridgewater has been great. I think Sutton at wide receiver is quite a nice talent coming off a great week. So you're feeling good about that. You're probably starting him now. And I feel really good about this matchup. I feel like Sutton has the potential to be a top 10 receiver this week. He's ranked 24, and I think he was obviously has that potential. He did it last week. He was number 4. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised if Sutton has another big week. I do worry that this game. I think Denver is way better than New York Jets, which is true of probably a lot of teams that play the Jets. But I wouldn't be
Uh,
surprised if
I'd say almost all.
that does hurt. Maybe maybe they're ahead most of this game, so maybe that does hurt his value. But I think Sutton could be up for a really good game.
Yeah. I think this could be a huge game for Melvin Gordon. Um, like you said, there's a good chance they're up pretty quick and they just kind of play ground control. And I um I think Gordon's going to be decent the rest of the season, but I think this could be a repeat of week 1 where he was a top 10, almost top 5 running back.
Both him and Williams are completely like on a dead split carry
Yeah.
load. So but even then, Melvin Gordon was a top 10 back in week 1. Noah Fant been
Yeah.
really good as well. We didn't talk about
Yeah,
him,
no
but
offense, been
obviously if you drafted him, you're feeling good because
I'm trying to remember. I don't know that we should be that surprised because I think Bridgewater's always kind of had a thing for tight ends. If I think I'm trying to think back at his career, I think he always kind of relied on the tight end quite a bit. So that probably should have been something we expected. But yeah, like we said, might be starting Bridgewater in a little bit of a deeper league. Sutton and I think Melvin Gordon's going to be in for a big week. We have the Dolphins and the Raiders next. Um, wow, Dolphins. Um, I think I'm starting Gaskin in the league because I have to, but you're not. You don't feel good about it.
yeah,
That that's the league where I feel great about I almost have too many wide receivers, and this is what happens when you have too many good wide receivers. You don't really have a running back, but um, he's one of those guys that like, hopefully, maybe in a flex spot you have him, but he's not a guy you love. There's not really
yeah.
a wide receiver you're excited about.
Yeah, I mean, I like their talent on the wide
Yeah.
receivers, like I really do. But the problem is their quarterback. Two are
Yeah.
going down.
Well, there's your answer. Who was 32 in week 2?
Oh,
It was
there we go.
Brissett.
It's Brissett. Yeah, Jacoby Brissett. I do not like him as an NFL quarterback. I feel bad saying that, but I don't think he's a great one. I would take Jared Goff over Brissett.
Oh wow.
Might have to edit that out. But yeah, I wonder if Deshaun Watson will be in Miami soon. So I know that was a big
Kind
thing.
of seems like it's leaning
If
that
that
way.
does end up happening, this wide receiver core I think immediately gets a huge upgrade.
Yeah.
Uh, I really think Deshaun Watson, assuming all the legal stuff, depending on what happens there. I mean, he's shown that he can. I mean, he had Hopkins, he had Fuller, and he'll be connected back with Fuller
I
again.
would say
So
is Fuller back this week?
I think he is going to be back this week. Yes. So
Okay.
yeah,
I want to keep an eye on what he does because he's got a ton of talent.
I just can't stay healthy. So yeah, not much else to say there. Gaskin, probably good chance you're stuck starting him, but I do not like this offense whatsoever
You're
right
not
now.
happy about it.
And then over on the Vegas side, Derek Carr. Oh, I knew I was gonna mess that up. I can't. I used to always call him David Carr, and now I mess it. It's just a mess. Okay, so Derek Carr is a top 10 quarterback so far, throwing for over 400 yards in both weeks. I think it's like 800 some yards. Well, obviously, if you threw for 400, he's over 800 yards, and yeah, he's been really good.
Math degree.
I don't think it will continue. I saw somebody said I can't believe somebody dropped him in my league. Like he's been so good. Like I'm like, I don't really have a problem with it. Like depending on the size of your league, even though he's been good so far. I mean, he's still only quarterback 8. It's not like he's been quarterback 3.
No,
yeah,
I don't know. I just don't believe it. Like he's been good. I just don't buy it.
I think this could be a good week for him still. Miami, I think this, but I think this is going to be a lot of Kenyon Drake. I think we'll have a solid game. Waller, obviously, you're gonna play Waller.
Yeah.
But you're probably not playing any of the wide receivers.
Definitely play Waller because he seems to be the only guy Carr can see on the field.
I mean, Ruggs had a good game last week.
Yeah, Ruggs had a good week.
Yeah, so I don't think you're starting Ruggs this week, even after coming off that big week. He's still only wide receiver 31, so even after a huge game, because week 1 wasn't great. So yeah, besides Waller, I don't think that anybody did much in week 1. So I don't feel good about this Las Vegas. I might have said Oakland already, but Las Vegas team offensively.
Notice I just went Raiders.
Yeah,
you just say Raiders, you don't have to worry about it.
Besides Waller and Kenyon Drake, maybe as a flex, I believe Josh Jacobs is out for this game.
Yeah, honestly, there's not a whole lot in this game to care about fantasy wise.
Good chance you have nobody you're playing in that game. So yeah,
if you're a red zone guy like I know we are, probably not a game you'll see a lot of this weekend.
I mean, you'll see. I mean, there might be some touchdowns, but yeah, you won't care.
A game you will likely see a ton of on the red zone this weekend is Seattle, Minnesota. I'm pumped for this game. I don't watch a lot of like full NFL games, but this might be one where I'm guessing. I should have had the start times. This might be an afternoon, like a 4 o'clock start where they're kind of lower. Yeah, I might have to watch a lot of this game because there's just a ton of great players in this game. Obviously Russell Wilson is a stud. Tyler Lockett's been just lights out, like amazing.
Yeah, DK Metcalf hasn't been there yet, but yeah, I mean, I expect big things from Metcalf.
Yeah.
And yeah, Lockett's been incredible. Carson's been good as well. So the whole offense. I mean, I guess Everett hasn't really put it, but like you don't really have much there at tight end. But yeah, you're feeling great about Lockett. You're feeling great about Metcalf. And you're starting
the big four.
Yeah, so
you're starting the big four.
You expect a lot of touchdowns here. Over at Minnesota, I think Minnesota's kind of interesting because we've talked about them because of Osborne.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kirk Cousins right now is top 10. He's actually number 10 quarterback. He's been solid. Dalvin Cook, I don't think he's put up touchdowns really much, but he has been really good. He's involved in the pass game. He's involved in the running game. Dalvin Cook is incredible. Probably, number 1 running back now in fantasy with McCaffrey going down, assuming, I don't know how long he's going to be out, but yeah, Dalvin Cook is incredible.
Dalvin Cook, I will say, still hasn't practiced this week, so keep an eye on it.
But... yeah, always make sure you look at that, but he's Dalvin Cook, so if he's suiting up, you're playing him.
If he... I'll take Dalvin Cook at 50%, and I'm still putting him on.
And then Jefferson Thielen. So obviously Jefferson hasn't been what you want him to be, like where you drafted him, but you're still starting him. You still feeling, as of now, he's still a probably top 10 wide
Yeah.
receiver. Thielen, I thought at wide receiver 18 was a little low. I mean, he's currently wide receiver 4. I know he didn't have a great game last week for Thielen standards, but man, I don't know. Osborne was wide receiver 13, so you have to expect some of that will go to Thielen, and I'm expecting Thielen. I don't know. 18 seems kind of low. I feel like Thielen's always one of those wide receivers. We haven't talked about Cooper Cup yet, but I feel like he's always one of those wide receivers that you don't like. He just puts up huge numbers, and you're like, well, how in the world does this guy always open?
No.
How is he always getting touchdowns? How's he always getting all these catches? I like Thielen a lot. You're starting both of those guys for sure.
Yeah.
And
No
Osborne,
question.
all the way down at wide receiver 60, I thought that was crazy. Wide receiver 19, both weeks he's top 35. And I mean, obviously, top 30, he was 13 this past week. I think that's kind of crazy. It's a team that runs 3 wide receiver sets. Osborne's on the field. I actually,
I'm telling you, some of these wide receiver rankings just don't make any sense.
I guess Osborne was only on the field this past week 60% of the time, maybe with game flow and everything. He wasn't on his field as much as week 1, but still, like
I still think in like a 14 teamer, I'd feel great about putting him in my lineup.
I'd say like a third wide receiver maybe, or a flex. Yeah, I don't think it's really that crazy. I think he'll still be involved quite a bit. I do think Thielen and Jefferson will probably be a little bit more involved, obviously, but I don't expect Osborne to be the number 1 fantasy wide receiver like he was this past week, but for the team. But I still think that's good. And Conklin, obviously, you're probably not starting him, so at tight end.
No. All right. So next we've got Tampa Bay and the Rams. I mean, this Brady guy, I've been hearing good things. He's continues to just blow my mind how he continues to do it. Like, I shouldn't be surprised at this point. I'm still surprised.
Quarterback 2. It's crazy.
Quarterback 2. And like, we've talked a lot about guys who can like, oh, he was QB, or he was like whatever, wide receiver 1, and then he was he was 4 and he was 3. Like, that's where he is. And I mean, if you have Brady, you're obviously starting him. Wide receiver situation is still, Evans came back, which was nice because he obviously was awful week 1. He's still your number 1 choice. In my opinion, he's still number 1 choice. I guess if you look at the rankings, he's not. He would be the second choice on the team. But where do you have Evans and Godwin? Because I think they're close, but I still would much rather have Evans.
Yeah, I'm a Godwin guy. I would probably put Godwin at like wide receiver 15, Evans at like wide receiver 20. But I obviously think those are the 2 guys. Antonio Brown, I think week 1 we see is nervous. We were nervous about it, but I think it was a little fluky. Yeah, I mean, looking at the snap counts, Godwin was on the field 56 snaps, Evans 46, and Antonio Brown all the way down at 28. So Evans and Godwin, if you have either one of them, you're starting them, I think. So not much to talk about.
Gronk's been crazy.
Daily fantasy.
Gronk's been surprising.
Yeah, and Gronk, Gronk has been incredible. I saw like when he was on Monday Night Football saying how he doesn't even watch film. He's like I just run by people. I don't know if I believe it or not. Like Gronk seems like the guy.
I 100% believe it.
Like I don't know,
100%.
But I've also heard that he's like a savant and he like knows all this. Like he's brilliant, so he may not have to. Like I don't know, but yeah, he's been incredible. So yeah, you're starting Gronk, feeling great about it. At Godwin, Evans, he's probably not starting Antonio Brown now after last week. We didn't talk about the running backs at all, but Fournette and Ronald Jones look to be on a complete timeshare, and you don't feel great about either of those.
Like Fournette, if you have to, is going to be the guy you probably want, but you're not happy.
And they're a timeshare without, and then they have a third down back, Giovanni Bernard, so you don't even have like that part of it. So it's just not a running back situation.
Try to avoid the running game if you can.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you take the next one because I know you want to.
Okay, so I'll talk about the Rams. Yeah, so there's I've talked about the Rams a lot. Stafford is right where I thought he would be, around quarterback 10. He doesn't provide any rushing, obviously, so that is the one thing you don't like there. Like why like Jalen Hurts is usually ranked higher than him because of that. And then, we look at the wide receivers, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. Robert Woods hasn't been great yet, but I still think high things for him. And Van Jefferson. I think Cooper Kupp he's currently wide receiver 1. I think he is ranked this week right now, wide receiver 9. I think he might end up. I'm kind of thinking he might finish wide receiver 1. I am like really high. Like obviously, I would
Yeah.
if you took that 1 or the field, I would take the field. But I actually think this is sustainable. I think Stafford and I think this offense will continue to put up points. Woods will be better, for sure. I mean, he can't really be worse than what he's been. I mean, it's not like he's been bad, but I mean, Woods is going to be better than wide receiver
He's
40.
not a 40s. Yeah.
And again, I'll keep saying it. Van Jefferson is somebody that he's currently wide receiver 60, 62. I think is going to end up. I think he's going to be in like a top 35 wide receiver, we'll say. Somewhere in the top 40. So I think he'll be good. Higbee, decent chance you're starting him if you have him. You don't feel great about it, but anything else with the Rams?
Not really. Henderson, his ranking is stupid low, but other than that,
I don't understand why he's ranked so
if
low.
you have him, you're starting him, so it doesn't matter. But like his
good chance
they've got him ranked 30.
Yeah.
They've got him 32 for some reason.
Yeah, I don't understand. I'm not sure. I think ESPN had him ranked. Yeah, that must have been something. Well, I think ESPN had him ranked like 20th. You're probably starting him. Because I was like very confused. Maybe somebody like forgot to rank him or something. But yeah, let's even say he's running back 20. You're probably starting him. He's currently running back 8, so he's been quite a star there over in Los Angeles.
Yeah. All right. Next we got Packers and 49ers. Packers. Aaron Rodgers came back to Aaron Rodgersville after the. I mean, that first week was just that whole offense was atrocious. So it was good to see everybody kind of get back to where we kind of expect them to be. And there's nothing surprising on this team. It's Rodgers, it's Jones, it's Adams. Like, I'm probably still starting Tanyan just because I have a soft spot for him. And depending on how your draft went or what tight ends are available, you might be too. I think he's closer to the 5 he was in week 2 than the 41 he was in week 1. But my whole, if any, like creeping to that top 5 permanently might not be completely accurate, but you know who you're starting for the Packers. There's no surprises here.
Yeah, Rodgers was, obviously awful in week 1, but he is who we thought he was. I think most of us thought he would be back. Yeah. And Aaron Jones also. I mean, the whole offense was much better. It was the Aaron Jones show, honestly. Yeah. Aaron Rodgers was great. Devontae Adams, good. Tanyan, top 5 guy. Nothing really else set. If you're starting anybody, you're obviously starting Rodgers. You're starting Aaron Jones. You're starting Devontae Adams.
There's no question marks on this team.
Nobody else.
And then you're not starting anybody else.
Yeah,
like that's just how it goes. San Francisco. You got Garoppolo. You'd be in a real pinch to have to play. Mitchell looked. He was ranked 37, so it's hard to say but he didn't look terrible. Like he looked okay. Samuel kind of came a little bit down to earth, but it wasn't a guy we've talked about had another honestly very poor performance in Ayuk. So that's starting to concern me just a little bit. And Kittle's Kittle. He didn't have a great week too, but you're not putting him anywhere near your bench.
Yeah, people are going to be panicking maybe on Kittle if you can get him for. I mean, he's a top. I'm going to say he's a top 4 guy now because I think Hawkinson is clearly in that top. But I would say he's a top 4 guy every week. So I mean, if somebody wants to give if somebody would give up another tight end, that's not the other 3 guys. I would say 100%, and if you got to give a little bit extra, that's something you could think about with the rest of your team. But yeah, Samuel has been incredible at wide receiver, and I even think at wide receiver 19 might be a little. I feel like he should be a little bit higher. I know he's only wide receiver 27 this past week, but he had that huge week 1, and then not much else. Samuel's on the field 70% of the time in week 2. Ayuk was 54% and didn't do much with it. Sherfield was 34%. So yeah, those guys were on the field on the field somewhat. They didn't do much with that. Mitchell is on the field 60% of the time. So I mean, he's on the field enough to do something. You're probably starting him if you have him. We'll see. Trey Sermon. He had 1 snap this past week, so I'm expecting him to continue to get. I mean, he'll get a little bit more as the year goes on. I just don't know if by the end of the year if that will be anything relevant. I think he'll be more involved, but I think Elijah Mitchell
I'm
still
less
is the
concerned
guy.
with. I was mildly concerned with him taking the job, and that just doesn't seem to be the direction they
And Hasty got
want to go.
25 snaps, so he's actually another guy. So
Yeah.
it is kind of crowded, but Mitchell is still the guy.
Mitchell
So
seems to be the guy until he does something
yeah, so you're
to
starting
take that
him,
away.
and you're starting Samuel, you're starting Kittle, and no one else.
Nope. All right, and to
Final
wrap it
game.
all up, we've got the Eagles and Dallas. So I don't know how I'm deciding who gets their mascot said and who gets their city said. It's just kind of happening. I just realized like every matchup, one gets the city and one gets the mascot.
I just
and I have
assume you
no
don't
idea
know
why.
what the other one is, so you just go with the
I
one
know
that you.
what they all are. I've just realized it took me to the last game to realize every game I'm doing one or I don't know. Eagles and Cowboys. See, I know what I'm doing. All right. So, on the Eagles side of the ball, Hurts has been very surprising to me. Extraordinarily.
Yeah, the rushing has really been saving him for sure.
I mean, that's the big thing, but I don't know. Super surprised. Miles Sanders looked pretty good in week 1. Didn't have a great week 2. I think he's going to be just fine. He's going to be in that 20 to 25 if I had to guess, maybe even a little bit above 20, like late teens. But I think that's where he kind of is going to live. He's never going to be the number 4 running back, but I also don't see a week where he's the number 50 running back. Like he's just kind of going to be that. I honestly, I would say pretty confidently, I think 39 in week 2 might be the lowest he is all season. I just think he's kind of solid.
Yeah, you don't know what the game flow. Also, obviously, pending injuries, of course, but
Well,
he
yeah.
isn't a 2-to-1 timeshare. I mean, he's the 2-to-1 with
Yeah.
Gainwell. So Gainwell, I think is kind of interesting, but I don't think it's probably going to stick around that for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the situation. I don't think this is a like, hey, Gainwell slowly
But we'll see.
gains reps.
Obviously, and then the wide receivers besides Smith, we talked about uh, Jalen. Right? Oh yeah, we talked about Rager a little bit, TCU guy, but he's still you're probably not starting him.
You're not starting him. I'm not starting him, and I love him. So
even Smith, you don't feel good about. Goddard, yeah, you're probably starting him if you got him, but that's he's fine. You gotta play him if you have him. But yeah, not really a lot of wide receivers there to support that, and that just shows Hurts being a top 10 guy, and the wide receivers not putting up tons of numbers. It's because rushing as a quarterback. I mean, he's running a lot, so.
If you were smarter than me and drafted Hurts late in drafts, good on you.
Yeah,
great choice.
He's looking like he's number 7 right now, and I think there's a good chance he finishes. I'll say top 7. I think that he can sustain that for sure. So I think feeling pretty good about that. Dallas on the other side, obviously tons of talent over there. I do find it interesting. I don't know if you saw that, but Mr. Pollard, running back 12 right now. When I saw that, I'm like, Zeke. We talked about
week
this.
2 helped a ton.
Yeah, how Zeke is heavily involved in pass protection. He's a great there. So he's going to be on the field. But Pollard, when I saw that, obviously, but even week 1 he was running back 39, which isn't great. But I mean, Zeke was 46.
Zeke was
Pollard
46.
is involved in the passing game. I think he's in that flex territory, and obviously shown that he has upside to be a top 10 back. So. I think Pollard being at running back 36 this week, I think that's fair, but I think there's a chance that we get to a point, depending on how this offense, how it transit. I mean, whatever. I don't know what's going to happen with, in 5 weeks, 7 weeks with any injuries and stuff. I think there's a good chance we might see Pollard kind of in that Detroit Lions, like that with the Swift and Williams, where we see the kind of the same thing. That's kind of the timeshare they're on, but they're more involved in the passing game, and ends up being. Instead of, right now running back 36, he might be running back 25, 27, 28, and you might be playing him every week as like a flex option. So
I could see him cracking the top 30 on a regular basis, which is a solid flex start in a lot of leagues, depending on how everything falls.
Yeah, and Lamb, Cooper, obviously you're playing both of those, and you're not playing a Dallas tight end unless you absolutely
Are in
have
a
to.
bad
And
spot.
I still don't understand why Jarwin is ranked ahead of Schultz, but that doesn't matter probably for you. But I don't understand why they continue to rank those. I actually think I have them flipped. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought Jarwin. I might have flipped the two. I think Schultz is wide receiver 21 for the year, and Jarwin is 25. But I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure Schultz is the higher for the year. But either way, that doesn't
It's
matter because
irrelevant.
you're not starting these guys. Either one, unless you're super desperate, and even then, maybe daily fantasy. I think if you were in a daily fantasy, I would start Schultz over Jarwin. I'm guessing they're about the same price.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so that is week 3. Hopefully that helped out some people, and we appreciate you stopping by. If you made it this far, thank you very much. It means a lot to us. Throw a like, comment, maybe subscribe. We're now putting out videos 5 days a week. 3 of them are very short, kind of based on one guy, and then we do 2 of these longer form a week. So come back tomorrow, check out our quick hit, and good luck to you in week 3.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hit the like button. You guys are great. See ya.
See ya.